requested uncle to walk me down the aisle instead of my stepdad, and my mom threatened to skip the wedding. Then the big day arrived, and what happened next was unbelievable. So I'm a 26-year-old woman, and I'm getting hitched to my boyfriend, who's 28. We've been together for 3 years and engaged for the last 7 months. My wedding is just a couple of weeks away, and I'm super excited. Last week, I asked my uncle, who's 55, to walk me down the aisle. Here's a bit of backstory. My uncle is my dad's older brother, and has pretty much been a father figure to me my whole life, since my biological dad passed away when I was just 4. I barely have any memories of him. My mom, who's 48, worked really long hours as a real estate agent, so I spent loads of time with my uncle and his family. To be honest, I think of my uncle, aunt, and cousins as my second family. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love my mom, and I'm so grateful for everything she's done for me. I know raising me on her own couldn't have been easy, but my uncle's family has always been there for me too, and I really wanted him to have the honor of walking me down the aisle. He was super happy when I asked, agreed in a heartbeat. However, when I told my mom about it, she wasn't too happy. She thought I should have consulted her, since she'd hinted to my stepdad that he might be the one to walk me down the aisle. For context, my stepdad's only been in my life for the past few years. We get along okay, but we're not particularly close. I don't see him as a father figure. He's just my mom's husband to me. He never made much effort to be involved in my life, so I didn't see any reason to ask him. I explained all this to my mom, but she insisted that I should ask my stepdad instead of my uncle, because she had already given my stepdad the impression that he would walk me down the aisle. She didn't want him to feel left out. But to me, it's my wedding, and I believed my uncle deserved this role. I stood my ground and told my mom that it wasn't happening, and she couldn't change my mind. 3 days ago, during a phone call, my mom hung up on me when I said it was my decision. I thought that would be the end of it, but she came over later that day and started the same argument again. She wanted me to ask my stepdad to make him feel good and potentially build a better relationship with him. I was already swamped with work and wedding prep, so this was the last thing I needed. Our voices raised, and the argument got pretty heated. She even threatened not to attend my wedding if I didn't ask my stepdad. That really pissed me off. My own mom was trying to blackmail me over one of the most important days of my life. It was clear to me that she cared more about my stepdad's feelings than mine. In a heated moment, I told her she was free not to attend, and that by doing so, she'd miss out on meeting a really special guest I'd invited just for her. Here's the deal. This special guest is a huge name in the real estate world, and my mom has always looked up to her, wanting to work with her. This guest happens to be a close friend of my mother-in-law from college. When I found out, I asked my mother-in-law to invite her to the wedding, knowing it would make my mom ecstatic. But when my mom said she wouldn't attend my wedding, I lost it and told her she didn't need to come anymore. That's when she did a complete 180, saying she wouldn't have pressured me if she knew about the special guest. She claimed she was only trying to push me to include my stepdad because she didn't want to hurt his feelings. At that point, I was too mad to care. I told her she'd already shown me where her priorities were, and I just couldn't deal with it. I just couldn't bring myself to care about how she was feeling about all of this. I asked her to leave because I was already super swamped with work and prepping for the wedding. I just couldn't handle this drama on top of everything else. I flat out told her she had seriously pissed me off, and I had zero interest in listening to her at that moment. My blood was boiling because of how she was acting, and I just needed her to clear out so I could think. I stood up, and she did too, but then she started bargaining with me. She said she took back everything she had said and just wanted to be at the wedding. I was already in a foul mood from our fight, so I kept pushing for her to leave. When she tried to argue, I started yelling and told her I was too stressed and couldn't deal with it right now. I really couldn't care less whether she wanted to attend or not. She had put me in a tough spot and had been super selfish, so she had no right to make any demands. I told her I'd think about it and talk to her later, but right then, I had nothing more to say. If she kept pushing, it would just get worse for her because I was getting really pissed. She finally left, but looked really unhappy that I hadn't fully committed to letting her come to the wedding. Once she left, I managed to calm down a bit. After chatting with my fiancé, who was away on a business trip, I decided to think about the whole wedding invite thing later. I was still pretty annoyed with her the next day, though. Just as I was getting ready to leave for work, she showed up again. She knew my schedule, but still decided to turn up and start talking about the wedding invite instead of apologizing. She tried to justify herself, saying my stepdad felt left out during the wedding prep, and she had told him I might ask him to walk me down the aisle to cheer him up. Apparently, he felt insecure about his place in my life compared to my uncle, who was like the man of the family to me, so she had hinted that I might ask him to walk me down the aisle. I get the whole lying to make someone feel better, but why did she have to do it at my expense? She knew I had no intention of doing that, and she was setting him up for disappointment. Instead of apologizing, she kept justifying herself, saying I'd understand once I got married. She said no matter what, she deserved to be there because she was my mother. I tried to tell her I'd discuss it later after work, but she wanted a commitment right then. I was about to say yes just to get her off my back, but then she started on about how I should talk to my stepdad and explain why I chose my uncle. She didn't want to be seen as the bad guy. That's when I lost it. She was making me late for work and wasting my time with her nonsense. I told her she could come to the wedding just to get her off my back, but now she was demanding too much by asking me to talk to my stepdad. I hadn't made any promises to him, so why should I be the one to break the news to him? I didn't need to tell him about the wedding details. Why should I give him special treatment? To me, he's just another guest. So standing in the doorway, I told my mom to leave me alone because I'd had enough. I said it was her job to make my stepdad feel validated, not mine. She went on about motherhood and how she raised me alone, saying this was the least I could do for her. I called her out, reminding her she never did it alone. She wouldn't have gotten where she is without help from my grandparents and my uncle. So, here's what went down. My mom was trying to push this narrative that she'd raised me all by herself, which was total BS, considering my dad and his family were very much in the picture. I couldn't let that slide. When I called her out on it, she had the nerve to label me as ungrateful. That's when I finally snapped and told her I didn't want her at my wedding. Then I just shook her off, jumped into my car, and sped away. I was boiling mad, and it took me a while to cool down. Even after all that, she wouldn't let up and kept calling me while I was driving to work. The moment I parked, I blocked her number, hoping to focus on my day. But nope, that didn't work out either. When I got home, there she was, standing on my doorstep. She rushed over to me, insisting I couldn't have been serious about not wanting her at the wedding. By that point, I was done. I told her I was dead serious, and that her behavior was making it clear things wouldn't change before the wedding. I had to tell her she was acting crazy and needed to leave my yard. Unfortunately, my fiancé was out of town, so I was on my own. She kept trying to reason with me, but I just kept telling her to go. Eventually, I lost it and said I'd call the cops if she didn't leave. I even pulled out my phone to show her I meant business. She started crying, calling me heartless, and saying she couldn't believe how I was treating her, despite everything she'd done for me. I told her I didn't want things to come to this, but she left me no choice. She was driving me nuts, and I needed her to back off. After a lot of tears, she finally left. It's been a few days since then, but I still feel pretty bad about it. I talked it over with my fiancé, and he thinks I did what I had to do, but we're both kinda lost on how to handle this guilt. Last night, my fiancé and I finally had a chance to sit down and talk about everything. It's clear we're both stressed with wedding planning and extra work. Maybe that's making us more emotional, but my mom's behavior was still way out of line. We're not sure if my reaction was right or just stress-fueled and whether I owe her an apology. So, we're looking for some advice here. Update. Hey everyone! Got an update for you. First off, thanks to everyone who commented on my original post. You guys pointed out that my mom's behavior was unacceptable, but also that my own stress levels were off the charts. So, my fiancé and I have been doing some serious thinking over the past week and a half. We realized we needed to scale down our wedding plans, especially our guest list, which had ballooned to nearly 200 people. It was stressing us out big time, and we knew we needed to cut it down to folks who really mattered to us. We didn't need over 100 people, especially those we barely talked to anymore. We were just going overboard with the invites. So we've got that sorted now. We'll be sending out the invitations later this week, and I'm feeling way less stressed about it all. As for work, I decided to take a breather. I talked to my bosses, and they were totally cool with me offloading some of my workload. They agreed I was doing too much and needed a break. I'm in a much better place now and aiming for a stress-free wedding. I'm really glad I shared this here because it helped both my fiancé and me rethink our approach. We're both pretty type A and can get uptight without realizing it. Thanks to the advice and comments, we're doing much better now. Oh, and about those who didn't make the final guest list cut. Yeah, that includes my mom and stepdad. My mom's behavior was a big wake-up call, and it helped me realize I needed to trim down the guest list to people who truly matter. So here's the deal. My mom's been pushing these crazy expectations on me, and by extension, my stepdad. I honestly don't even want him at my wedding, and without her there, I really don't see any reason for him to be hanging around. We haven't talked since I made her cry the other day, and honestly, it's been kinda nice. I was really getting fed up with her. I chatted with my uncle about how she's been acting. He said he wouldn't have minded if my mom forced me to replace him with my stepdad, even though it would have hurt him. But I made it clear, it's my wedding, so it's all about what I want. I mean, I want my uncle to walk me down the aisle, and my mom should have respected that instead of making a huge fuss. Now we're not even speaking, and there are only 8 weeks until the big day. It's such a mess, but I'm trying to come to terms with it. For the record, I haven't blocked my mom anywhere. I mean, I did for a bit, but then I unblocked her that same night. If she wanted to apologize, she had plenty of opportunities. My anger's died down a lot, and she's had enough time to rethink things, but nada. I'm starting to lose hope that we'll patch things up before the wedding. I really wanted her to be there for me, because despite everything, she's still my mom. We've always had a good relationship until now, and I'm super bummed about how things turned out. Fingers crossed we sort things out in the next few weeks, but even if we don't, I'm still marrying the love of my life, so it'll all be okay. Oh, and update. I finally sent out the invites a few days ago. Just as I planned, my mom and stepdad didn't get one, and they were livid. Apparently, they've been asking around and found out that everyone else got their invitations. My stepdad seemed shocked, which I kinda get since we're family, but he didn't know what my mom had done. My mom's reaction, though? I don't get it. We haven't talked in weeks, and I told her she wasn't invited because of how she's been acting. Still, she showed up at my place this morning with my stepdad, demanding answers. Luckily, I had the day off, so I had all the time in the world to deal with this drama. Plus, my fiancé was there this time. Even though they started yelling as soon as they walked in, we kept it civil. Once they were done, I explained to my stepdad that my mom had been pushing me to replace my uncle with him, which he didn't know about because she wanted to look like the good guy. You should have seen his face. He was completely blindsided. Then I turned to my mom and reminded her that she already knew why she wasn't invited. She never tried to fix things by apologizing, even though I had left the door open for her. I was genuinely hoping she'd reach out, at least to understand my side, and assure me she wouldn't pressure me anymore. But that never happened, so now she won't be at my wedding either. I thought I was being fair, but she kept yelling at me, calling me an ungrateful child, and saying she deserved better, just to make me feel guilty. Honestly, I was just getting more and more irritated. It was clear that my fiancé and I didn't want to talk to her, so my stepdad grabbed her by the arm and said we weren't even worth their time. Then they left. After they were gone, I finally blocked both of them. I'm just so relieved that this is over now. I really hope they leave me alone after this. Update 3. I got married 2 days ago, and it went exactly as I had planned for months. Cutting the wedding guest list short turned out to be a fantastic idea, because we actually got to talk to everyone there and give them proper attention. It wasn't too crowded, and everything felt really pleasant and dreamy. I did end up missing my mom a little, but my uncle and fiancé were right there to comfort me and assure me they'd always be there for me. That helped me feel better about the situation, and by the time I hit the dance floor, I'd pretty much forgotten about it. In short, we had an amazing time, and I don't regret anything. Now, my husband and I are off on our honeymoon in a couple of days, and I know it's going to be absolutely perfect.